All right, ready to dive into Jane Austen's world. Today, it's Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, a classic.
But we're not just talking about the story itself. We've got the novel, illustrations,
Ooh,
and a preface that really gets into Austen's style.
interesting.
So we're not just looking at what happens, but like why this book is still so popular.
It's fascinating, right?
I mean,
Centuries later?
it really is. Going beyond the surface, figuring out what makes her characters so real,
Yeah,
that sharp social commentary, and why Pride and Prejudice, out of everything she wrote, is still such a big deal.
it's true. And the preface does not hold back, saying Austen's talent was rare, even comparing her to, like, Swift Thackeray.
Big names.
Yeah, they praise how real her characters are, especially the women. But when you read that comparison, what stood out to you?
You know, they really focus on how well Austen writes dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
It's spot on.
Yeah.
But it's not just witty banter. It shows you the character, the social dynamics,
Right.
even like subtle power dynamics,
Yeah.
you know? It's true. Like that line from Mr. Bennet. He tells Mrs. Bennet, "You want to tell me?" And I have no objection to hearing it.
Oh, I remember that.
He's not just being sarcastic.
Exactly.
He's kind of pointing out how imbalanced their relationship is.
It's subtle, but it's there. Austen fits so much into what seem like simple exchanges,
Right,
and that connects to a huge theme.
right.
How society was structured back then. The preface doesn't like spell it out,
Right.
but entailment was a massive deal.
Okay.
Families like the Bennets, no sons, they couldn't inherit their own property.
Which explains why Mrs. Bennet is like fixated on marrying off her daughters.
Exactly.
It wasn't just finding a good match.
Yep.
It was about their whole future financially.
In a world where women had so few options.
Exactly.
So if we, reading it now, find her a bit much,
A bit much, yeah.
you got to remember that. What's she coming from? Her actions, even when they're ridiculous,
Oh, totally.
come from this very real fear.
Remember when she practically forces Jane to go to Netherfield on horseback in the
Right.
rain,
Oh, classic Mrs. Bennet.
hoping she'd get stuck there?
In desperate times. But it shows how heavy those social rules were.
Yeah. And speaking of marriage, Austen gives us two very different takes, right?
Totally.
Charlotte and Elizabeth.
Absolutely, yeah. Charlotte's marriage to Mr. Collins, it's all about practicality. The preface actually calls him egregious,
Oh, wow.
like way over the top funny, but
Yeah.
Charlotte's making a calculated choice, money over love.
Which makes Elizabeth turning down Mr. Collins even more impactful.
Totally.
I mean, she's got the same pressures, the same limited choices,
Mm-hmm.
but she refuses to compromise, even if it means, like, becoming an old maid, as they said back then.
Exactly, and that's what makes her and Darcy so interesting. It's not love at first sight.
No.
It's this slow burn,
Yeah.
misunderstandings, prejudice, them slowly letting go of their pride.
You know, it's almost like you can track how their feelings change through the illustrations alone.
Oh, interesting.
From that first ball, Darcy's all tolerable about Elizabeth. To later, you see these stolen glances. It's like their whole journey is visual.
And that journey, it really shows how Darcy changes,
Mm-hmm.
which is key to why this book works. He starts off arrogant, distant, someone you're supposed to dislike.
Yeah.
But Austen's smart. She uses other characters to challenge that,
Oh.
even before Elizabeth sees it herself.
You mean like the housekeeper at Pemberley?
Exactly.
She says such nice things about him. It's the total opposite of what Elizabeth's heard.
Right.
It's like we get a peek behind the curtain, you know, about how quick people are to judge.
Exactly. The housekeeper's this unlikely voice of reason,
Right.
showing us how easily we get caught up in appearances or gossip.
And then there's that letter.
Oh, the letter.
Elizabeth reads it, and suddenly everything about Wickham is flipped.
Total game changer.
What stood out to you in that letter? About Darcy, I mean.
For me, it's when he writes, "My affections and wishes are unchanged, but one word from you will silence me on this subject forever."
Wow. Yeah.
He's vulnerable, respecting her choice, which is so different from how he was before.
It's a powerful moment. Elizabeth has to reconsider everything she thought.
Totally.
And we do too, as readers.
Right.
But then Lydia
Oh boy, here we go.
runs off with Wickham,
Mhm.
throws everything into chaos.
It's a turning point, definitely. And it does more than just move the plot along.
What do you mean?
It exposes the hypocrisy, you know?
Mhm.
Lydia, young, naive, she's condemned.
Right.
Wickham, charming rogue, gets away with it.
It's like everyone ignores how manipulative he is just because he's handsome. Makes you wonder, if he hadn't been caught,
Oh, gosh.
would anyone have even cared?
It's a scary thought, right? Shows how dangerous it is to value charm over actual character.
That's true even today, really.
Exactly.
And Lydia's note, You will laugh when you know where I am gone.
Oh, no.
Like it's all a big joke.
She had no idea.
Right. How naive she is compared to how serious it is.
Very effective writing, I think.
Oh, totally. And it's Elizabeth who gets it right away.
Of course.
She knows this could ruin them. Not just Lydia. The whole family. Her sister's chances of a good marriage. Gone.
Right, and that's when Darcy steps up.
He does.
Shows who he really is. He could have walked away.
Yeah.
Let them deal with it.
Easier, yeah.
But he doesn't. He puts himself out there, risks his own reputation to fix it?
And that brings up something interesting.
What's that?
What if he hadn't? What happens to Lydia then?
Oh, that's a good question.
And how would that have changed how Elizabeth sees him?
It makes you think, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Austen doesn't give easy answers, does she?
No, she doesn't. And that's what makes it great. It stays with you. But I think maybe we should pause here
Okay.
and really dig into those complexities in the next part.
Sounds good to me.
Mm.
It's crazy how one thing, Lydia running off, changes everything.
It's true. Like, Austen uses that to push everyone.
Right.
And you see who they really are. Flaws, strengths, all of it.
Totally. And the pressure they're under.
Exactly. It's like that crisis shows the difference between what you think is true and reality, which she does a lot in this book.
You're right, it makes you question everything. Like, we find out Wickham's not who we thought.
Totally.
But then Darcy, who seems so cold, he's the one who actually helps.
It makes you rethink everything. And speaking of that, with Darcy stepping in,
Yeah.
it's like a second chance, not just for one couple, but two.
That's true. We've got Bingley back, free from Darcy's influence, and then Darcy himself trying again with Elizabeth.
And both times, it's about really understanding, getting past those first impressions, you know?
Yeah. Bingley realizes he was wrong about Jane, and Elizabeth, she finally knows the truth about Darcy.
It's like they both had it wrong in the beginning.
It's interesting, though, because these second chances, they aren't big romantic gestures.
No, not at all.
It's more gradual, like they both have to grow before they can actually be together.
Exactly. Bingley has to, like, stand up for himself, for his own happiness.
Right.
Darcy, he's got to work on that pride, actually say how he feels.
And Elizabeth, too, she changes so much.
Oh, absolutely. She realizes she misjudged Darcy, sees the real him.
It makes their ending feel so much more earned. Because it's not just love, it's respect, understanding.
Exactly. A real partnership.
Not just a fairy tale.
And that's different from Charlotte, right?
Oh, totally.
She gets security, stability.
Which is what she wanted.
Right, but Austen makes you feel like something's missing.
Yeah, like real connection, you know?
Yeah,
Being truly known.
exactly. It makes you wonder, would we judge Charlotte so harshly today? That's what's great about Austen.
Totally.
Makes you question these societal things, even now.
And it's just so entertaining.
Yeah.
All the witty parts, the awkward moments,
Right.
the characters. Like Mr. Collins.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, his proposal to Elizabeth is so hard to read.
Painful, but hilarious.
Right. But it's not just for laughs.
No,
Wow.
Mr. Collins, he's like this whole commentary, you know, blind ambition trying to climb the social ladder.
Totally. And how clueless he is about Elizabeth.
The irony.
It shows how limited women were. He's so focused on himself, his connections, that when she says no,
He can't even process it. And his reaction, saying it, adds to her other perfections.
oh my gosh, yes.
Like, she should be thanking him.
It's so in her face. And then he says he has her mother's permission.
It's classic Austen, using these funny situations
Right.
to show you the deeper stuff about power, hypocrisy, all of it.
It's brilliant, but it's not all satire and social stuff. There are really genuine moments, too.
Oh, for sure.
Like when Elizabeth sees Pemberley and how Darcy is there.
Oh, that's a huge turning point for her.
It is. This grand estate, the housekeeper saying such great things about him.
Right. It challenges everything she believes.
Totally. And then him helping her into the carriage.
Oh, such a small thing.
But it means so much after all their awkwardness.
Austen's good at that, conveying so much with just a look, a
Ye-
gesture.
Totally. She doesn't need big speeches. You just feel it.
Exactly. And that's what makes this book worth reading again and again.
You're right. There's always something new.
A little detail, a line that hits different.
Totally. It reminds you, great books, they're not just about what happens or even the characters.
Right. It's how it all works together.
Exactly.
Right.
We've talked about second chances and how much people change, but like the ending itself, what do you think?
Right.
It's happy, sure, weddings, everyone's together, but is it really happily ever after?
That's what I like about this book. It makes you wonder, even after you're done reading, like
Right.
with Elizabeth and Darcy, they love each other, yeah.
They do.
But is that enough?
Exactly. They're from such different worlds. Their personalities are so different. And
Totally.
all that pressure on them, you know, socially.
Right, like with Darcy, he's gotten better about his pride,
He has.
but it's still there, It's part of him.
That's true. And Elizabeth, she's so independent.
Right.
Can she really be happy, even as a rich, well-connected wife? Is that enough for her?
Good question. And
Yeah.
they had to fight to be together, challenge what everyone expected.
Totally.
But does that just go away?
That's true. That pressure doesn't disappear just because you get married.
Exactly. So will they be okay in those circles?
Right. Or will they get pulled back in,
Yeah. It's like Austen wants us to imagine what happens after the book ends.
Yeah. Like, what challenges do they face? How do they deal with it?
It's exciting, but also you don't really know.
Totally. And it makes marriage more complicated than just they fell in love, the end.
Oh, for sure. Austen doesn't make it simple. It's about figuring it out as you go.
Working at it, which
Yeah.
honestly feels more real.
Way more realistic. And it's one reason this book still matters.
Totally.
It makes you think, makes you question things,
Right.
about people, about how we are.
Exactly. So, listener, that's what we leave you with.
Eh.
Do you think they'll be happy? What do you think they'll go through? Let us know.
And go read the book. We barely scratched the surface here.
That's true.
All the side characters, the plot, how well Austen writes.
It's worth it, trust us. So grab your drink, get comfy, and dive in. You won't regret it. Until next time, keep thinking, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.